Everyone, welcome to the September 29th meeting of the OpenJS Security Collab space. Good to see everyone. So two topics are always good for walk-on topics if we've got them. But the first one we wanted to talk about was NPM publishing. This is something we had talked about last week and around creating some guidance and trying to make it not complicated, even though we think it will be complicated no matter what. Um, and sounds like, Wes, you are going to prepare a Node Collab Summit session on the above. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So two parts. So last week we also added to the agenda me doing a talk on the main track with a similar content. So I'll split it up here a little bit and just spend most of the time on the summit here. But I've started doing the prep for the talk. I'll probably send some notes to y'all for feedback just to make sure that I'm, broadly not missing anything or sending a message that we think could be better. But it generally comes down to sort of four reasonable setups with pros and cons, and really trying to focus for those folks on how to think about this problem, not necessarily to propose them all like in depth with details of why. Like I'll talk about pros and cons, but those will be more to point out like what works, why it works, and why other things don't. And then the session, which is where I think we have more to do here, will be to sort of take some of this content, make sure everybody in our collaborator circle really understands why this is important, what the details are, and dig into particularly here's the only working way, and maybe this one kind of works, but you have to do X, Y, and Z. And then from that, get a really strong message to take back to the GitHub and NPM folks with we hashed this out at the Collab Summit session, and this is coming from the Node core, and foundation, collaborators. We're signing off on this message. Here are the things we're asking you to do to help us move this forward. And so that's kind of where I'm thinking the session would specifically have that as a goal for the outcome, which is why I think it makes sense as a Collab Summit session, even though it's not, specifically Node.js related. Node publishes a bunch of packages, but really what I want to get is these are, core people in the ecosystem who have agreed this is the asks. These are the gaps that we're asking, GitHub to fill in the immediate, hopefully, future. I think that's probably enough to folks think that's okay.
I know I know we focus on the maintainers and the community publishers here, but I'm wondering, do those same recommendations, are they the same recommendations for an enterprise or a corporation to follow, or are there different, stronger recommendations a corporation or enterprise should follow? I'd be curious from that, working for such a large organization that's very risk averse. So if I guess the question to ask is there something corporations should be pushing on their GitHub contacts and contracts and TAMs and that kind of thing as well in the meantime?
That's an awesome question, and one that I definitely have not put together a clear answer for, but I also operate the, NPM account for Netflix. So I've done this a bit. I probably will need to think about that a little bit more deeply, but most of these recommendations are universal because they are not necessarily about the type of org. It's about the fundamentals of is it resistant to automated publish? Is it resistant to account takeover? Is it resistant to mistakes being made in your CI workflows or in your local developer machines? and those apply to us all. I think the things that we probably need to dig into for organizations, and that, so I'll give you a link once I'm done talking. I'll go find it. Because I brought this up in one of the community feedback things, is like, we manage the tokens. My team manages the tokens for all of our folks who play. Yeah, okay, yeah. And this whole thing with them cycling those every 7 days is a nightmare. Like, we can't do it, right? That would be, I didn't use the word nightmare in the post, Jordan, though. I understand why you said, I think what you said in the first one, but it's like, I did try to tone the language back so that it felt, like I wasn't on the attack mode. But it is
that
a
makes it
nightmare.
more better received anyway. So that's
Yeah,
a good idea.
but it is frankly just untenable. It just won't work, right? And so the problem is that the alternatives don't provide what any larger org needs first. We do all this manually today. It is a big pain. But the asks for that type of thing is a lot more centered around automation, authentication integrations and stuff like that, which would improve there. And I don't think that those asks are typically larger. And so if we're going to focus on enterprises coming to ask that, I think we would need to sort of prioritize a little bit, because the fundamentals are still not yet met, right? So like, if they push us off tokens, those 7-day tokens, then that means our only options are non two-factor auth options, which are, to me, totally off the table, right? So they basically said your one good one that was basically a token with enforced two-factor auth is actually no longer tenable, because now you have to renew that token every 7 days, and the teams who manage the publish are not the teams that manage the access, right? So for orgs, that's pretty impactful. Sorry, I've got a whiteboard where I wrote some of these out, and I'm just looking up at it to make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh, and then the other thing is the removal. This, I think, was Jordan, your issue. The other one, the T-top removal or whatever is the other one. That removal would also impact this workflow, which is, again, just a regression for the users who need that. And their answer right now is go to trusted publishing, which has a whole slew of, we've got a whole slew of things we have to cover with them before that can be actually
and trusted publishing it's an incomplete feature anyway, right? Like, it doesn't work for a number of use cases. So it's just not, even if using it would fix all the problems, which it doesn't, it's not possible for everyone to use it. So it's just not a viable thing to require everyone to do.
Would that make sense if we describe very clearly to, especially for maintainers, solo maintainers, in which situations trust publishing wouldn't work for that? Like, in which cases or which scenarios they must not use that?
All scenarios. There is not a single scenario today that is acceptable with trusted publishing.
Even for a solo maintainer?
No, especially for a solo maintainer. So it actually is slightly more secure in a multi-maintainer setup, because you can use your other maintainers as a substitute for second factor. There is no two-factor auth setup that works with the current trusted publishing. So basically, you end up relying on GitHub protected environments.
Yes.
And it only works if you have another maintainer available to approve it.
Yeah.
And then that is not resistant to account takeover. So it is only resistant to automated publishing, which helps with things like mistakes and that, right? But if one of the accounts are taken over, fully taken over here, to be clear, we really actually mean fully taken over, not just fished into one step here, but like this would be,
You can log in as the user on
If
the
you can
website.
log in as the user and take and
Yeah.
change their settings, then right, that's what you need to do this. So it's not like a low bar here, to be clear. I'm not trying to say this
Mhm.
as bad as what we just saw with, you know, NX. But as soon as that happens, now they can add a new user, and it can be anybody, and they can then just go and approve their own thing via their
Yeah,
second
make a sock puppet account to be
Right,
the second maintainer.
right.
Yeah.
And so the only thing here that will remedy that is if they build, because this doesn't exist today, two-factor auth back into the NPM side for trusted publishing, and then integrate it back into the
Yeah, got it. Got
Or
it.
if they built the thing that the RFC calls decided should be built 5 years ago that they never built, staged publishing, because then you could publish from anywhere,
So-
and then a maintainer could use any form of two-factor, multiple maintainers even, to approve and promote a staged publish. But it's unlikely
So,
that that's
and
gonna
so
be
this
built.
is also in my talk. I am going to talk about a substitute for staged publish here, which is that your automated pipelines publish to a next dist tag and either hard code that or do something that basically makes a you know,
Okay.
it's slow roll, and then you would have a secondary workflow for the promote
With two-factor, yeah.
and that would help at least again make it harder to do the what Shai Halud did, which was just basically find everybody, you know, anything and just publish
So
hundreds of
that would
packages.
work if NPM added a way to restrict new publishes to only being on a set number of tags or certain tags, and basically disallow publishing to go straight to latest. If you could do that, then like that would be perfect. And then it would be somewhat secure, especially if it was a one-way setting that once you turned it on a package, you couldn't turn it off.
Okay, so
'Cause
we
then
probably
that
need to
part
talk
would be
about this
resistance to
too.
ATO.
Okay, so one-way settings we need to talk about.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
Well, it's not dangerous necessarily. It is it could be
Mhm.
fine. But there's a bunch of scenarios where it takes somebody on the operational side possibly having to do support work that does not exist today to make that functional, right? So imagine one user goes in and makes a setting change without consulting the team, and we don't have package level fine grained permissions today. So you are
Right.
either a fully trusted owner of the package or not. And so because we don't have that fine grain, it means that you can't even onboard publishers unless you've gone through and made sure they are like really experienced and know that that setting is a one-way setting. And if you go tick that box and hit save, we now are stuck and we can't publish.
That's fair.
Right? And so they need to then go on have either support that can very quickly undo the one way, or they need workflows that undo the one way. Like there's a whole bunch of like operational features that would need to be done to have that be true for either trusted publishing or this, you know, these other theoretical features we would do if we wanted to go one way. And so I'm when we talk about these one-way things, I think Marshall maybe also made some suggestions about going one way. I think there was some suggestions on the GitHub releases being one way once you go immutable. Was another comment folks made. And both of those have these problems, right? Where you either need to have the fine-grained auth controls to make sure that's only in the hands of your like, you know, core folks, or you need to have some support workflow that can undo the one way if it was done on accident. So
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so the TLDR is that do not use trusted publishing yet, and still keep using the NPM tokens and having a more secure workflow for that. All right, makes sense.
For essentially for a single maintainer project, nobody has provided me evidence to contradict that the most secure approach is local publish with a token that only lives on a physical machine, so that it really has to be a guy with a wrench or an account takeover to hijack my stuff. For multiple maintainer projects, as Wes hinted, like it's a different trade-off, and even though publishing from CI approaches, which are almost always one factor, but they don't have to be, but they almost always are. Even though that's like objectively less secure in a lot of ways. It's for multiple users because it's auditable and you can control permissions and stuff. Like that may be a worthy trade-off, but like those are your choices basically.
But in those cases of local publishing with an existing token that's stored locally, wouldn't that be, for instance, the recent event of the supply chain attacks? Your token could be leaked, right? Wouldn't it be more safer if when you are publishing a new package, you create a new token that lives just once and then you delete that?
Yeah, so
That's what I'm actually going to recommend in the talk, to be clear.
Okay.
Because that.
Okay, so no spoilers.
well, that's
Well,
essentially
spoilers here. You know, if we think there's another way, I mean, Jordan, tell me if you think I'm wrong. But I'm going to say what I was planning to say at least is that this is let's start from scratch. Here's our first experience here, and it turns out it's actually probably the most secure if you do X, Y, and Z, and then X, Y, and Z was going to be log in, publish, and then delete the token locally, which is all you actually have to do is remove your NPM-RC. Now, the token is still valid on public NPM, but presumably if you do this workflow where you NPM login, NPM publish, NPM log out, that token is ephemeral in that like nobody's gonna they'd have to hack NPM to steal it, and at that point, and actually I don't even they'd have to crack it. You know what I mean? Like we're talking
to replace the binary, yeah.
So what I would suggest as a modification to that is, because it's really annoying if you have to do it each publish, is that you can set a setting in your npm-rc so that on every time you run npm publish as like a pre-publish, it gives you a URL that you have to visit to get a token. You get the token, you paste it in the prompt, and then it keeps it in your npm-rc even, but it lasts for a period of time, an hour, 2 hours, a day, whatever, something finite, and then you can reuse that. And so like, and then it becomes, if it can be invalidated after that period of time, then it doesn't matter if you delete it. You just keep it until npm tells you, oh, you need a new one now.
So
like,
just to
and
be
that
clear,
would work.
Love this, but
Yeah.
That needs to be npm building that. So I'm
Yes, correct.
specifically talking about things you can do today.
Okay, got it.
And then the session, this Collab Summit session, is where I want to really dive into these type of things and say, is that better than asking this, other workflow? Like when we're going to ask them something, we need to be crisp about like, this is the ranked order of importance. We understand, like, and you were on, actually, I think you maybe missed the call with Leo, right?
Yes, I did. I was on a plane at the time.
Because Leo was making very clear, we have limited time. We have to be very ruthless in prioritization so that we can get the things that are most important done. And so what I want to come out of that with is actually like stack rank these as a, feature request list and be like, if you do none of the other ones, this top one is the one we're really asking you for first, right? And so like that workflow sounds great. But like today, what that would need is like some new APIs. So, right, they don't even have APIs for user management at all. Zero, right? You have to engineer them from the website requests, and like those are not stable. So like, don't go do that. Right. So like manual is what you have here. And so what I'm doing in the talk is really saying, here is a manual workflow that works today. If you are a maintainer and this local one it's what I do most of the time. I'm not, perfect. Nobody is, but like I get my project ready to publish. I run npm login. I publish it with two-factor auth. And then I just delete the npm-rc entirely because I don't keep a local npm-rc. But like, you can also npm log out. And then that achieves this primary goal here. If you want to go the extra mile, I'm also going to mention going into, because I don't think people know this, you have to go into the NPM UI and delete the tokens for them to actually be revoked. NPM logout doesn't actually do that. It just deletes it from your local system. So like, again, that's the like local recommended workflow there. And then I did want to add one last thing here. on top of Jordan's. Nobody has presented one that is good enough or whatever comment. Sorry, I don't remember. I'm missing your words, but I do think that there is a CI publish workflow that is good enough. It does include third-party integrations so that you can do second factor. And I think that is good enough. And I think, Jordan, you even use that somewhere.
In one, yeah. So the in one project I use it. I use a granular publish token, so for only that package, but it relies on a third-party server. So it only works because I have a third-party server I trust. That's not practical to demand of or expect of open source people. If GitHub could build something natively that remove the need for a third-party server, then that is what everyone should do.
But just to be clear, the third-party integration only handles the one-time.
It only handles inputting
OTP.
an OTP token
Right.
and putting it into
And
a thing.
even the trust there is reasonable in that they only have one factor. So as long as you have what you mentioned, a granular access token, which enforces two-factor auth, even the third party couldn't publish on your behalf because all they're handling is the OTP.
That's true.
And so I think that satisfies
I don't know.
the requirements.
I wonder how many OTP codes it would take to reverse engineer the seed, but that would be, other than that, I think you're right.
Valid. And this is why, you're thinking this is what we need. But also, I think it's higher number of publishes than any package on current NPM.
Yeah, that's likely.
So I think that one. So I think there's two coming out of this. I think there's really two here that work. And then there's two that are, some people will call it good enough. And I will call those out, but I don't call them good enough. And then I think they apply universally to anybody publishing packages, just depending on their own personal risk assessment. I think for an org like Steve, this is where this started. Here we went on a bit of a deep dive, but for an org, having people, get tokens and put them on their local machine is probably not, what most orgs are going to want. What we do is we mint them and encrypt them with one of our internal, security tools, and then granularly hand out access. And those are all backed by, two-factor auth and all sorts of other stuff that make that more reasonable, but still turn on two-factor auth. So again, it comes back to the same thing of the orgs have to do the same thing. And we should really make it easy for the orgs, because if we make it easy for the orgs, we'll make it easy for everybody, because orgs have it worse by having to manage so many, users and complicated things.
Should we move on to the next topic, which is related to this topic, but maybe we get concrete? So this was the ask around defining topics for the Node.js Collab Summit.
Actually, I think this is what I don't know exactly. Maybe we might have something different for Node.js itself, but I think it's all in the same discussion, right, Wes?
I think it feels that way. I mean, I will say, I think multiple times I have mentioned this to folks, and they have brought up other supply chain things. I was gonna, your comment in the chat right here about checking the SHA-SUM of the binary, right? That is actually not the main focus of what I'm trying to get at. There's holistic supply chain security. I'm specifically trying to get toward what are the publish settings and what are the workflows that are there. Feels like there's something here. So you said, checking the NPM, binary for malicious, modifications, Bishek Notter. I don't know if y'all are familiar with him. He's works on LavaMoat. When I brought this up on Blue Sky, was like, hey, I hope you're going to mention not running in post install scripts, and here's my LavaMoat package for that. I think there's more to it. So if we wanted to do 2 and talk about like the other stuff, like I feel like there's definitely room for that.
But from Node.js perspective, what else we can do? Because I think the initial idea of the permission model was to prevent those access if whenever you people try to have a post installing script that executes a Node.js binary, they will inherit the parent permission model flags, and then it could have some prevent some attacks. But I don't know what else we could do from Node.js side.
Yeah,
I mean-
that's the kind of stuff. The permission model is the stuff I was thinking where we could like probably brainstorm a bit and come up with some good, I did copy your safe NPX script and I made some modifications for myself, but like expecting users to do that seems pretty low. It definitely feels like there's for a whole bunch of those kind of.
When you're talking about mechanisms for maintainers, you can recommend workarounds and complex flows. When you're talking about protections for users, pretty much anything, like it's great to be able to say, hey, if you're really worried, this is the things you can do. But unless it's changing the defaults, it's basically not going to move the needle, in my opinion. And for npm install, only npm can change those defaults.
And Node can make strong recommendations. And if there's
course.
features, right? Like if we could find a permissions model set of settings that worked for some 80% case, I don't know what we'd want to set as a bar, to then recommend to NPM to implement. And then if there was other additional, user experience changes that need to happen. Because frankly, I the permissions model in a real project is like a nightmare because they're just the user's just getting peppered with like, I don't know, should it be able to read that? It's just some random package that's in my transitives.
Deno and Android and stuff have that type of permission model, and users like pretty empirically do the exact same thing they do with like terms of service agreements, is they just go agree, approve. And like, it's a great idea until everyone gets tired of it. And that happens very quickly. Yeah, it's like the major flaw with OCAP as a thing is that like, it's not like humans don't want to do that.
There are some settings that could apply globally in case of npm. We have mentioned that some flags could only be changed if npm changed the full, but in case of the environment variable node options, you can make that global, and basically whenever you run npm, it will get that node options by default whenever it spawns a Node.js process. So if you define that you want to have the permission enabled to any Node.js process, that might work. But as Jordan mentioned, if you run, you need to define a set of policies for each project, and that might be a nightmare. That will be a nightmare, because a lot of projects, they read from different files, and on the startup, if they are reading from OpenSSL configuration, they need to understand why they are reading that and why that's the default. But yeah, that's all.
And then to add on top of it, the recent attack, I have to look into it. I haven't tried to set this up, but spawning processes means that the permission model there, right, won't be transitive. So you set the permission model in NPX, and then NPX goes off, and I don't think this attack got a name. This was the first in the series of attacks here over the past month. It was the one that used local AI agents to actually like pick up and find all the tokens on the machine. So what they did is they used Node, I can't remember specifically which was the exec file, to call Claude and whatever all these other local binaries are, and those are what they actually did to do the work. I don't know if y'all saw this. There's a good blog post I can find the link to, but basically they passed in all the unsafe flags. And so basically they use node as the entry point, but as long as that node process had child process exec, they basically had a free reign. And so they exec, the Claude
But
to basically
that's
say
blocking.
unsafely run all these commands, and now you've escaped the sandbox. So you need like a little bit more, right, than just.
Whenever you enable the permission model, the exec and the spawn are blocked by default. So that would prevent if this is the entry point.
But the point is then you get a reasonable use, right? So the reasonable use here is that almost every tool that you have to run in an NPX style calls spawn in some form. And
yes,
maybe they shouldn't, but they all do for reasons. And so then as soon as you enable it, you now have enabled it for all use cases there, which could then mean you enabled it for one you know it needed to do, and you got one you didn't want.
Yes, if you spawn a Node.js process from a Node.js process, the permission model flags are inherent. So if you don't have access to the parent, you don't have in the child. But
Sure, but
that
you can
doesn't prevent on a bash script.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's literally what I was gonna say, which is what they did. They spawned,
But the inheriting mechanism is environment variables, which you can override when you launch anything. Like there's no way in computers to like only allow you to launch, like to force you to propagate those that policy down. So it's not effective in that regard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I feel like there are improvements here, and I think there's probably user experience things that we could talk about on how to make policy API more functional for real projects, right? Again, all for this, like, let's give some people some suggestions on how they can do it a little better. But I look at things, like Lava Moat and what's the other one that
E
SES.
chain guards thing?
Or
whatever. Like there's
chain guards thing is just like
I was trying to
they're
broaden
giving
the
you
umbrella.
images that have been checked already.
Sorry, I was trying to broaden the umbrella.
Yeah.
All of these things that sit outside of this that are trying to help improve, right? So chain guards thing is one checked, right? There's I think NodeSource has some verified modules thing as well.
And
Socket has a wrapper.
Socket has a wrapper. All these things that sit outside are great additions to the ecosystem that we can recommend, but they don't work for everybody because they will have different levels of opinions, right? Like some things, if I tried to roll them out at work, nobody would be able to adopt them. It would break everything, right? And like I can't, so my hands are tied. Even though it might be more secure, I can't do that, right? And so I think we'd all have a different list of what those things are, and so there's no like fundamental nugget there. Whereas like the permissions model enables it via the platform so that those people could take different opinions.
Yeah. So there's one thing that we are experimenting on, and that also related a bit with a talk that Tobias did to NodeConf a few years ago. We are doing a long research about implementing eBPF support to Node.js that basically, the problem of the permission model is that we rely on file paths. We don't rely on resource, which means that if you spawn another process, that could be rejected. And there are many ways, there are many edge cases you need to cover, and most of the time you won't be able to cover all of them. But once you start to restrict that by the kernel, using eBPF, you can be way more, you can definitely create a sandbox for that. If that's in the scope of Node.js or not, that's up to discussion, because a lot of companies, they create ecosystem around that, and that's unrelated to the platform they're using. If they're using PHP, if they're using Node.js, it just works. But this is under research, and there is one talk that Tobias did for NodeConf, which is basically it creates a sandbox by the terminal. For each terminal process, they have a kind of a mechanism that sandbox all the commands you run to make it safer, and that prevents some leak if you are trying to read from a file where you don't have access, or if you are trying to spawn a process, it's kind of auditable. But yeah, that's a long discussion.
It sounds to me like we have enough for another session. Like, right? I mean, this feels, we've just spent almost the entire meeting talking about these things. It feels like we could do them back to back, or I don't know if people would be overwhelmed with too much security deep thinking. But like, it feels to me like there's a lot to talk about here. Do you want to, I guess the action item here would be, do we want to make another proposal? I can't run another thing. It's too late for me to sign up for that. But Raphael, I would totally be there and participating if you...
I actually would like to, instead of creating a different proposal, we just extend your proposal a bit. It may be from 30 minutes to 1 hour, and then we start from NPM, and then we jump to Node.js. Because they overlap a bit, and I don't like context switching. So imagine going to a different meeting, like maybe we can find good things there.
That works for me. James is my volunteer on partnering on that, and he's not here. But I could start a DM maybe with you and him and just say, hey, we were working on the security thing. He's pretty flexible here, I think, but he was definitely more focused on the publishing aspect because, he was looking at Pino's, and Matteo had and
we have been discussing that for Festify.
Yeah, that was why he was, into it.
Well, and I'm not going to, as I told you, Wes, like, I'm not going to pre-commit to doing organizational work on it, but like, I will be as available as you need during the session.
Yeah.
To help in whatever way I can.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe, I'll just start a DM, maybe with anybody who wants to be a part of just being, ensuring that we have the right scope set for it. And then, if we make it an hour, we can, I can lead the stuff.
I can help. I won't be in person, but I can definitely help with discussions and, bring some ideas.
Cool. Okay, I'll start a DM right after we're done with the call.
Okay. I think that was actually beyond our official agenda. Is there any other things that folks want to discuss in the few minutes we've got left?
Maybe a public happy birthday for Robin.
Thank you. Again, all my favorite peeps. Community Day.
Awesome. Alrighty, on that positive note, I think we'll adjourn. Thank you all. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks all.